Welcome to this episode of the PA System. On this episode, I'm talking with Mary Huang about growing your financial awareness and how women can start to secure their financial future. So, welcome to the show, Mary.
Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So great to have you. So, I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you today because I know that this is something that you've really dug deep into recently in your own life, but now you're teaching other people how to do this as well, and primarily women. And I think this is what's so important. And so, this idea of having financial freedom and knowing what that even means, and then how to start to create that in our lives is so fun.
It's so fun. It really is so fun. But the truth is, though, Pamela, the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because of how hard the journey was to get to this point.
Yeah.
I went to a really prestigious university in New York, and this information never crossed my desk. They should be teaching this in high school. They should be teaching this every year that we're in school. I mean, there's no reason why this is information saved only for the elite people. It's not fair, and that's why I am passionate about talking about it, because we really need to help the middle class that's disappearing down into the lower class up in the other direction. And that's what the mission is all about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, 100%. And so, before we get too deep into this topic, I want people to just know a little bit about you and who you are in case they haven't encountered you before. So, tell us a little bit about you, just where you grew up and what that was like.
Man, I was the first one born in the US in New Jersey. My parents are immigrants from Taiwan. So I had that immigrant mentality of working
Mm,
hard, but also this we're so lucky to be in America. No matter what's happening and how difficult things are here in America, we are very privileged to be here.
mm,
So we lived all around the globe, so we were able to see a lot of different cultures and
mm.
be malleable and open to different ways of thinking. So I think that's really wonderful. But the downside is I was raised by two people who were mentally unwell.
Mm.
Today we will call them narcissistic. It was very abusive. And the reason I bring that up is because it is connected to why I finally found myself in this as a financial professional now,
Right.
because money was a huge way of controlling us.
Mm,
That culture, unfortunately, uses, as a parent, parenting us, it was very authoritative. So it just
mm,
was, we had no voice, no opinion. We just had to follow the rules.
right.
And I, as a female, was told. So my father became an international businessman, well known, and I said, I want to be just like you when I grow up. And I wasn't allowed to, because he said there's no place for a female in the business world. And as a little kid, it's really important that parents understand how impactful their words are,
Mm,
because kids will just take that in as a hypnotic command
sure.
and just believe it and just live out their whole lives being limited, believing that there's a limitation. And it's all in our mind, which is incredible, because then we
Right.
can actually go and find someone to help us remove that, if we're having a hard time doing that. And so I was also raised that as a female, I stay in the home, do the dishes, do the laundry, take care of the kids, and the man goes and makes the money outside.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wasn't allowed to work. But I was expected to be highly educated, well put together, well spoken, and be the one that pushes the man up. So, I was to marry well, and then be the force that pushes the man up to success. And that was what my parents did. It didn't end well. So fast forward, I did get married, and I thought, great, I'm checking off all the boxes. I'm doing exactly what I was
Right.
groomed and raised, programmed to do, until my two kids came to me and asked me one day if I was okay. And when I looked at them and I realized, all of a sudden, it's like my rosy colored glasses just shattered off my eyes. And
Mm,
I looked and I was like, wow, I've allowed myself to get my wings clipped through the years, slowly but surely. And I got stuffed into a cage. But now that I'm on the other side and I help women come through and heal through that process of divorce, um, on the empowered side and the healed side, looking back at that person who was stuffed, it's all a matter of coming from a childhood and these lies of limitations that we
Mm,
agreed, like read the four agreements. That's talks about that we agreed on these lies. So we just have to disagree and take those lies off.
right.
And in that moment, when I looked at my children, I said, wow, this is a repeat of my childhood. And I refuse to allow them to
Mm,
experience what I did. So it was as if I could hear them turn into my wings and click into my back. And it gave me the courage to grab them. And we left. And
mm,
we left behind $1 million life. And we lived in poverty for a little bit because we were in search of stability.
right.
And that was a very, very difficult journey, but it was necessary. You listen to any great leader, and they will tell you that adversity is necessary. Walking through that fire is necessary for that transformation from the
Mhm,
caterpillar to the butterfly. It's
right.
absolutely necessary. And
Yeah.
so out of that came so many gems. And one of them, which is the focus of today, is why being financially minded, why reclaiming our power around money is important. I gave away my power to my ex-husband when we were married to handle the finances. I brought in, I had sources I brought in, but I wanted him to take care of it. So I willingly gave away my power. When
Mm,
I help women who are healing from divorce, as soon as I get them to do the simple things of an income and expense sheet, like a personal one, not
right.
even a business one,
Yeah.
they start to walk different, talk different, sit different, and their voice is different because all of a sudden we're taking charge of our lives.
Right.
Something so simple.
Yeah, and I really want to. So I want to pause here for a moment
Yeah.
because we've covered a bit of territory already. So I want to make sure that like we have a chance to let some of this sink in. So just this idea, right, that we have control as women over our own finances. There's still a large percentage of women who feel like, oh well, that's the man's job. That's I'm supposed to let him do that, or I wouldn't know how to do that, that sort of thing. So I think this is super important for us to start to sit with because it's sort of like, well, wait a second, because if he goes out tomorrow and gets in a car accident and
Yeah.
he's gone, where does that leave you? And so having a sense of awareness around just that is really powerful. But then to take it to the next step and say, well, what does that even really look like? How do we start on that process of figuring out, oh, how do I sort of, wrap my head around what it means to manage my own finances, and then to be able to then take it to the next level of investing and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about that journey and how we might start out. Just, let's say we're at ground zero. We've never, managed our own personal finances. What's our first best step?
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad you brought it back to that place of just that having the awareness. That is so true. So many times this is way too common. The spouse dies and the one who's left behind, if it's a woman, oftentimes don't even know how to log in to the accounts. I mean, this is maybe like an older generation, but it
Sure.
runs the gamut, right? There's a spectrum. And so, or if somebody had a life policy and they didn't even know like which bank accounts, what are all the bank accounts and how do you
Right.
get into it? What are the policies? You didn't even know you're a beneficiary to something.
Right.
So that comes a little bit later. The basics is understanding what's coming in and what's going out, the very, very minimum, because then you can break it down into categories. Your
Mm,
expenses. If your expenses are like, these are the non-negotiables, you have to have this to have a roof over your head, to have food in your belly. There's things that electricity, right? Maybe Wi-Fi is something that's negotiable. So you break them down into categories, like three main chunks. One is like, gotta have it regardless. And then the next one is like, car payments. Maybe you can downsize. So things like that where you can actually play with it. And then the
sure.
final one is, you know, things you don't have to have, like eating out, the types of groceries that you're buying. You have to have
Mm,
groceries, but maybe you can buy different things that will last
right,
longer, right? So getting to understand where you can control the expenses is great. If we have a lot of credit card debt, which I did get into when I was leaving the divorce because I had no money.
right,
And I don't even know, like, I know it's my creator that helped me through all of these years, and then to bring me to people who can teach me how to remake myself so that
right.
I can then bring it to other people and help them have hope and empowerment during these really scary times. For the people out there, you know, stress is on the rise, and stress is like such a huge, like, behind the major diseases, the causes are stress. And it's
Yeah,
also one of the top reasons of divorce. You know,
yep,
it's a top reason behind why couples fight about money. And so, with the external world being so volatile and so scary in so many ways, we have to find a way. How can we regain our power?
mm,
And it can be so seemingly small, but sometimes it's those small things that make you have a strong foundation. That's what we want to have. We want to
right,
start with the small building blocks of keeping those foundations solid. I remember when I left, that's the mantra that I had. I was like, I need to build a strong foundation. That's all I care about, is unshakable foundation.
yeah,
Because in that moment of that shock of what I had to go through and put my kids through, I was like, never again. I never want to find myself ever in this position again. And that fire caused me to like seek, like, with so much hunger, you know, and that's a
sure,
good thing. It's a good thing. It's a
right,
blessing, because now my children get to benefit from that. And that's what's great about whoever's watching today. And if they want to learn more, they can always reach out to me, because I'm a financial educator now because of that.
right,
And because the whole thing is, we have to empower the people. We cannot
yes.
allow our people to go into major fear. And then when people give up, what happens? They just give up on life.
Well, and I think this is a valid point because, well, especially actually because I think a lot of women are sort of intimidated by this whole idea of managing their own money if it's something they haven't done before, and it goes back to, well, I don't really know how to do that, I don't really understand it, or I've never been exposed to this in this way. And so I think that's really the value of having a conversation with someone like yourself, which is, okay, well, let's just look at the basics. Let's look and see, what do you have right now that's, in place, and then what do you need to put in place, right? And just to kind of get that foundation like you're talking about is so essential. So love that. And so then once we've sort of got that in place, where do we go from there?
Oh my gosh, yes. So that's just one piece for the foundation. Next, if there's a lot of debt, which I admittedly had to get into with the credit cards because the food stamps only covered food.
Right.
And, but look, like, I'm in a different story now.
Yeah.
So there's hope for everyone,
Right.
trust me.
Yes.
There's hope. All you need is to get information from a trusted source, and use your
Yes.
discernment and do your due diligence and take action. Take decisive action at the right time, which is always in the now. It's always now. You never want to wait, because time is something you can't recoup, and
Yeah.
time is a huge ingredient in how you can leverage and make your money grow for you over time. So no matter how young or how old you are, there is something for you that is safe, right? It's just that if you're older, you want something that's a little less risky. If you're younger, you can handle having more risk, and that's all good. So after that, you want to look at your debt. So like we help people when they come sit with us, and it's complimentary. We don't charge. And by the way, if you as an individual want to invest in a hedge fund, you need to have a criteria to match. You need to have at least $2 million, $2 million in assets, without including your primary home, $200,000 a year of income, and then that's like cuts out everybody, right? And then the 200,000 may not be difficult, like as an annual income, but plus the 2 million in assets, it cuts out a large part of our population. And then to get the advice, you have to pay anywhere from minimum 2 to 5,000 a month for advice, whether you win or lose. So it's very risky, but you can sit with us and we will give you access to similar information complimentary, because we literally are on a mission to just spread financial literacy so that people can get educated and make their own decisions. That's it.
Yeah.
So the next step would be to get out of debt. So in a healthy portfolio, there are 5 buckets that we like to help people understand. How are you doing in these 5 sectors of your portfolio? Like debt, if you're over a certain amount, usually like 30,000, maybe you want some help. We partner up with other people who can help you figure out what's the best course of action. We definitely don't we have experts that we can send you to help you by looking at your situation. But that's the first place we want to look at, because, okay, I'll give you a personal story. Those credit cards were like 14.5% interest rate, compounding.
Right.
But it was hurting me, versus later on in some of these more advanced and still basic ideas, actually, that I'll come to in a minute, where compounding is working for you.
Right.
We want to switch this into this category. So we get out of debt slowly but surely. And then the next thing is you want to look at, well, how are your investments for your future? It doesn't matter how young you are. It's a great time to start, because then you have way more time to let it compound over time. And so by the time you get to that age, you can benefit from it. Now, this is what I learned. Most people, if they work in the corporation and they go to human resources, most people know what a 401k is.
Right.
And it was commonplace in the past sometimes. And if you are getting matched by your employer, congratulations, definitely match it. But it's not as common anymore. And for sure, pensions aren't around anymore. Well, that's not true. Very, very, very few. Very
Sure.
few.
Yeah.
So the thing that I learned is 401k is great. However, you can't touch that money until you're retiring
Right.
at a certain age, right? So, and when you take that money out, you're taxed on the whole gain. So because it's tax deferred, people think you're not taxed, and that's not true. So I just want to correct that. You're putting tax deferred money in. You haven't paid any taxes on that money. So let's say you put in $100, and by the time you retire, you take it out. Now it's $100,000. Well, now you're taxed on that $90,000.
Right.
So the other option that we really love is, a tax advantaged category, where you pay money on that $100. You pay the taxes on it first, and then you put it in. And then when it grows and you take it out, then you don't have to pay taxes on that gain. So I love that. And I was telling you offline just a moment ago, one of my favorite things is, as a single mom, making sure that my kids are set up so that when I pass, because that's inevitable and we never know when that is, they're set up. They're set up financially. And okay, here's another thing that we need to understand. There is something called long-term care. The statistics are really high. People get ill. So that's a coverage that helps people if they get cancer, stroke, heart attack, that kind of stuff, where you need big amount of care.
Right.
If you get invested in the right vehicle, you can be taking out money from that vehicle to pay for that care. You can even be paying money to your relative who's spending time taking care of you. They just cut you a check. So, we work with a lot of different companies, anywhere from like Prudential to Nationwide. So we get really competitive prices, but not everything is created the same. But there are vehicles like that where, so I can rest well at night. It's like I have a big sigh of relief knowing now, especially as a single mom, that my kids don't have to wonder what's going to happen. Do I call daddy, my ex-husband? Like,
Right.
what do they do?
Sure.
So there's a lot of different things. Maybe if you're younger and you have kids, you want to look into modern vehicles to save up for university or college. So we help with that. And then my favorite category is infinite banking concept. So this is where, oh gosh,
This is
I
where it
wish
gets kind of fun. Yeah, I'm
this
excited
is,
for you to share about this because I
oh,
don't think there's a lot of people that are aware of this or even know what it is.
this is one of our specialties, and this is one of my favorite. It like just lights me up. I helped one of my friends who actually is also divorced, and I found out, wow, I'm glad you were more exposed to this information than I was, because she already had this. Now,
Mhm.
had I had this, it would have been a different story. So let me paint the picture. What it is an investment vehicle where it's under a life insurance tax code.
Mm.
So what you do is, and for all the moms out there who are married, or ladies out there who are married, even the husbands, but my heart goes out to the women.
Yeah.
This is protected in a lawsuit. This type of vehicle cannot be touched in a divorce. This cannot be touched at all. This is yours, and it follows you. And the coolest part, though, that's not even the coolest part. The coolest part is you're basically your own bank.
Right.
And so let's say you put in $100,000 and it's compounding over time, and it's just sitting in there. And on average, I don't want to put out numbers. If people want to know, they can call me, and we don't want to just throw numbers out there. But let's
Right.
use, for example's sake, just so we can have an imagination. Let's say it's giving you 10% because it's a round number. It's
Sure.
compounding 10% rate of return every year. That's pretty good. But that's not even the coolest part. The best part is you can borrow money against yourself. So you're not withdrawing your own money. Your 100,000 sits there continuing to compound over time, because so you don't want to touch that. And and it's indexed. So as the market crashes, you never lose a penny. Versus a 401k or a Roth IRA, it is a variable type of investment. So when the market crashes, I'm sure everybody understands, if they already have it because they already saw it, they're experiencing it, they
Right.
lose money. Right. And so a lot of people think, well, I can just let it sit. It'll rebound. It'll rebound.
Mhm.
Yes, it'll rebound, but we don't know how much time it's going to take to rebound.
Right.
And if somebody's nearing retirement age, we don't want to gamble with that.
Right.
So if that's a situation someone is in, I would recommend sitting with someone to find out comparatively what are safer vehicles to roll your money into, so you protect your hard-earned money from losing any more. Okay, so back to the infinite banking concept. So you can borrow money against yourself at a low interest rate. Let's just pretend maybe it's, even if it's high at 3%, anywhere from 1 to 3%. I'm just throwing imaginary numbers out, but
Sure.
it's lower than your rate of return. So it's a wash. The whole point is you borrow money against yourself at a low rate, versus if you go to the bank or a credit card, I was paying 14.5% interest rate. That hurts a lot
Right.
because you're never getting anywhere. You're just shoveling against the tide.
Right.
Over here, so my friend who also got a divorce, she was able to keep herself and her business afloat because she was borrowing
Mm.
money against her investment and paid it back after, once things were done.
Right.
And her money kept earning for her. And why are you able to borrow money against yourself at such a low rate? Is because they already have your collateral. It's already sitting in
Mhm.
their possession. So if you don't pay back, which is a strategy, depends on
Right.
what your goals are, you can choose not to pay it back. That's okay. Because they
Right.
have your money.
Right. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, so that's our favorite vehicle to educate people on, because it's so powerful. So
love that.
let's say you want to flip a piece of property, or you want to buy your home, but you don't want to take the money out unless it's life or death, or it's giving you a way higher rate of return than you're currently getting. Then it makes no sense to
Mm.
take it out. Just leave it there. Or don't borrow against it, because it doesn't make sense to pay a few, low percentage rate. And then you can flip that property at a high rate of return and then put it back in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for someone who maybe is listening with us tonight and they don't have any of these things in place, they're probably going, wait, percentages of what? And don't get overwhelmed by the idea of there's a million and one different, things that you have to think about. It's actually a lot more simple than you might think. And going back to some of those jumping off points, just sitting down with someone and getting some clarity around, what are your expenses going in and out? What are the things that you can cut back on or are most important, and just figuring out those initial pieces can be a big step forward. And then you can start looking at, oh, well, what makes sense in terms of my life insurance, or these sort of investments that you're referring to. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
What's really cool is that when people hear the word life insurance, they clam up. And I don't know if it's because it has a negative connotation in the industry, if people are not, it's too morbid to talk about. But
Mm.
whatever the negative connotation people might have about it, what I want to say is, how the cell phone, like the iPhone, the first one versus today is so different. I don't
Yeah.
know if you remember, but I remember when my father got the first mobile phone, it was like a brick. Do you remember that?
I remember one of my friend's parents had one of those, and it was absolutely, it was like a briefcase. It was so
Yeah.
big.
It was so, so big. It was huge.
Yeah.
It was enormous. And so imagine if we're still using that today. No, of
Right.
course not. It's like evolved every single year. There's a new model every year. And so the same thing goes for medicine, prescriptions, and the same thing goes for financial vehicles, including life insurance. And so that's one of the vehicles that are now being used as investments.
Mm.
It's not just money when you die, it's money you can use now when you need it. And so, yeah, I love that you brought it back down to the basics, because this is, if I didn't know anything and gave all my power away and left the Tesla and the houses and the this and the that, and used food stamps, and then slowly crawled my way with like blood, sweat, and tears. And it's actually very, very easy to understand if someone can sit with you and take their time to educate you piece by piece. It's not hard at all. Anyone can learn this.
Yeah, I love that. I just think that's so important for people to understand, because and especially, I mean, honestly, especially older women, who maybe haven't been in control of their finances, or maybe weren't the ones that were, running the business. And, I mean, the fact of the matter is we're more likely to lose a spouse as we age. And so having some of these just little tidbits of basic knowledge can go a long way, or just knowing, who to talk to and what to talk to them about. So I'm just so happy that you were able to have this conversation with me. It's so valuable, and I think there's so much here for the audience, and I want them to have the opportunity to connect with you and know how to do that. So I want to share your website. They can find you there, if you don't mind reading it off for those who are listening and not watching with us right now.
Absolutely. You can go to my website at marylhuang.com, and I'll spell it for the listeners. It's Mary, MaryLhuang.com. And yeah, definitely come follow me on social media. I am a divorce recovery expert and financial educator, because in that journey of coming back from the depths of darkness, finances is one important pillar of many. So you can find more
Absolutely.
information there.
So wonderful. Well, thank you again for being with me today, Mary. This has been such a pleasure. And to all of you out there listening, thank you for being here with us. If you got something out of this, please share it out. You never know when someone around you in your circle might need to hear this very message. And if you know someone who definitely needs to hear it, then please share it with them. And just lots of love and light going out to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks, Pamela. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.